All right, let's dive right into this. The United States literally just marked a massive milestone, its 250th birthday. But as we're going to see in today's explainer, this was definitely not your average backyard birthday party. It was a wild weekend defined by an incredible scale of celebration, severe natural disruptions that quite literally crashed the party, and some really powerful political rhetoric that highlights exactly where the country stands today. We're going to unpack the whole shebang using the facts straight from the ground.
To really get a feel for the energy on the ground, you gotta hear what attendees like Tammy Wapshot had to say. She actually traveled all the way from South Carolina just to be in D.C. for this specific celebration, planning her trip for over half a year. Her sentiment, calling it the best country in the world where people are free to do what they want, really perfectly captures the driving motivation for the hundreds of thousands of people who traveled across the country to be part of this historic milestone.
We've got a lot of ground to cover in this explainer, so here's our roadmap. 1. America's 250th birthday celebrations. 2. Extreme weather crashes party. 3. Trump's National Mall rally. And 4. Former presidents reflect.
Okay, starting us off with Part 1, America's 250th birthday celebrations.
So communities all over the country hosted what they were affectionately calling America's Block Party. The bipartisan America 250 Commission organized massive events, including huge gatherings at the literal birthplace of America, Independence Hall in Philadelphia. There were all-star concerts featuring massive names like Will Smith, Mary J. Blige, and the Smashing Pumpkins. But honestly, perhaps the most poignant moment, and this just brilliantly illustrates the spirit of the day, was over at George Washington's Mount Vernon estate. There, a special naturalization ceremony welcomed 150 people from 50 different countries, all taking their oath to become brand new U.S. citizens on the nation's 250th birthday. Pretty incredible, right?
And to literally bury a piece of this history for the future, organizers put together a time capsule that won't be opened for another 200 years. It's essentially a snapshot of American life in 2026. Inside, there's a signed copy of the Constitution, artifacts from all 50 states and territories, and, in a fun nod to global American consumer culture, a Coca-Cola bottle. It's fascinating to think about what Americans 2 centuries from now are going to make of that specific combination.
Now, you really can't talk about July 4th without bringing up this wild number, 66. Over in New York City, Joey Chestnut snagged his 18th title at the annual Nathan's Famous hot dog eating contest by devouring a staggering 66 hot dogs in just 10 minutes. Meanwhile, in the women's competition, Miki Suno secured her 12th title by finishing 38 3/4 hot dogs. It's a uniquely American spectacle that's been a staple since 1972, bringing the sense of familiar normalcy to such a massive semi-quincentennial celebration.
Moving right along to Part 2, Extreme Weather Crashes Party.
Because wow, the joy of those celebrations slammed right into some harsh natural realities. The sheer intensity of the heat wave hitting the East Coast was staggering. We're talking New Jersey hitting 106 degrees Fahrenheit, Delaware reached 101, Washington, D.C. was broiling at an even 100 degrees right as the main events were getting underway. And this wasn't just uncomfortable, it was genuinely dangerous. The blistering heat actually forced the cancellation of the National Park Service's Independence Day Parade in D.C. and shut down numerous other planned celebrations across New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and even out in Colorado. And honestly, the heat was just the start of it. As evening approached, the skies completely opened up. Think about the staggering figure, 750,000. That's how many properties were left completely without power across states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York, and Wisconsin. Severe storms just ripped through the region, bringing winds way over 60 miles per hour. In D.C. itself, massive thunderstorms forced a panicked evacuation of the National Mall, sending guests who were just there for the Great American State Fair and the big concert scrambling into nearby buildings for temporary shelter. Okay, jumping into Part 3, Trump's National Mall rally.
So despite those intense weather delays and crazy evacuations, the highly anticipated political events in the Capitol pushed right ahead. Now, to understand the dynamic of the weekend neutrally, we have to look at the 2 totally distinct entities running things. On one side, you had America 250, which was a bipartisan commission established directly by the U.S. Congress. But on the other side, you had Freedom 250, a privately funded events committee launched by President Donald Trump. This parallel structure is actually where much of the criticism about the politicization of the holiday came from. Critics argued the president was inserting himself into the center of the milestone, while folks at his rally pushed back, simply stating they were just there to celebrate their country.
Once the storms finally passed, President Trump delivered his Salute to America rally speech, which had been significantly delayed. He came out declaring that the American dream is back, and called this moment only the dawn of the golden age of America. His remarks, which pushed right up until midnight before a massive fireworks display, leaned heavily into political themes. He praised American expansionism, fiercely defended the right to bear arms, and stated that the nation's destiny is written by God. It was a fiery, definitive capstone to his privately organized slate of events.
But the atmosphere in the Capitol was incredibly complex and varied. While everyday attendees, like a man named Chris Cornell who traveled in from Maryland, were telling reporters they totally rejected the idea that the event was political and were just there to celebrate, the city also saw something very different. Approximately 400 masked and uniformed members of the white nationalist group Patriot Front were spotted. Videos showed them marching in perfect unison, carrying U.S. flags near the Capitol building and Union Station. It was a stark juxtaposition that really underscored the deep ideological spectrum present on the streets of D.C. that day.
Which brings us to Part 4, Former Presidents Reflect.
As the massive fireworks finale wrapped up around 1 a.m., complete with a dramatic flyover by the new Air Force One, the nation's living former presidents took a moment to offer their own profound reflections. President Joe Biden chose to focus heavily on the Declaration of Independence's core edict that all people are created equal. He framed it not as a completed mission, but as an ongoing journey, reminding citizens that choosing this path 250 years ago was where the work began, not where it ended. He really emphasized that the promise of true equality remains a major work in progress. Building right on that theme of progression, Barack Obama reshared a really powerful sentiment from a recent speech. He highlighted this ongoing, generational duty, stating that every generation must take up the unfinished work of the last and carry it further. It's essentially a call for continuous improvement, suggesting that the whole American experiment relies heavily on actively passing the baton of responsibility from one era to the next.
And it's really interesting how these messages align across party lines because George W. Bush hit on that exact same chord. His message was incredibly direct, laying down an explicit challenge to the public. The next 250 years require Americans to be citizens, not spectators. He is essentially urging people to get off the sidelines and participate actively in their communities and their government, rather than just watching history pass them by.
Finally, striking a noticeably more cautionary tone than the others, Bill Clinton pointed directly to the immediate, gritty realities of the present moment. He didn't sugarcoat it, noting that this milestone is being celebrated amid a period of deep division. He explicitly warned of renewed questions about America's role in the world, and highlighted serious threats to our own institutions and to our democracy itself. It was definitely a sobering reminder of the fragility of a 250-year-old system.
So as we wrap up this explainer, we're really looking at a massive clash of realities, aren't we? We saw boundless, joyous celebrations and incredibly moving naturalization ceremonies, which were immediately met by severe natural disruptions and extreme heat. We heard soaring patriotic rhetoric placed right alongside stark warnings about democratic fragility and deep political divides. As the smoke from the fireworks clears on this historic 250th birthday, we're left to ask ourselves the most important question of all. How will you answer the call to shape the next 250 years of this nation?